So hi there everyone. Today I'd like to present a paper called Pan-European Buddhist Youngsters. I'd like to start by saying that Buddhist children, teens and youth in Western society, despite having distinct identity and needs, have remained invisible to Buddhist communities and academics alike. So this paper aims to survey the state of dedicated provision inside and outside the classroom across Europe. There's been a change in the visibility of Buddhist youngsters in Europe since the 1990s. Coming up today in the 2020s, depending on national immigration policy, Buddhists with families in Europe may be as widespread as those without. Although there are different ways to make sense of the variety of trends within Buddhist youngsters across Europe, the most telling categorization in terms of Buddhist formation for children is net size of national Buddhist population and degree of ethnic integration, which I have generalized with countries on 3 levels as extensive, mid-range, or sparse adoption of Buddhism. So by extensive, I mean European countries with the largest and most diverse national populations of Buddhists, from 0.3% to 1.1% of the population. In decreasing order of net Buddhist population, the largest Buddhist populations in European countries is found in Russian Federation, followed by France, the UK, Germany, Cyprus, Denmark, Turkey, Switzerland, Belgium, Austria and Norway, of which approximately 1/10 would fall within the child, teen, young adult age range being considered in this paper. Such countries have relatively high proportions of heritage Buddhists as compared with convert Buddhists, where convert refers to those who have chosen to follow Buddhism early in life or who are the children of parents who have converted to Buddhism, and heritage refers to Buddhists ethically connected with countries where Buddhism has a dominant presence. The Russian Federation, in theory, has the largest heritage population of Buddhists in Europe, but in practice, for the current generation, Buddhist identity may be largely nominal. For Russia, I tried to conduct an online survey where 100 Buddhists in Russia were encouraged to share their thoughts, but only 22 of these agreed to participate. But they told me that the expected large heritage community might only be for appearances, whereas the majority were convert belonging to Gelug or Nyingma Tibetan Buddhist denominations. The survey underscored a particular tension around the public acknowledgement of Buddhist identity, particularly amongst the younger demographic in educational institutions. This sensitive dynamic necessitates a thoughtful approach to discussing religious diversity and inclusivity. For extensive countries, there are enough Buddhists for the formation of a single official point of contact to be requested by the government. Features of extensive countries is that the size of the Buddhist community is sufficient to form denominational schools, support ethnographic research, and have official consultative status with the government. With heritage dominance, more is done for children and youth. Buddhism appears as part of multicultural RE curricula in government-funded schools. As heritage and convert integrate further in extensive countries, there is a likelihood that the dichotomy will fade out after the second generation. European countries with a mid-range Buddhist population from about 6,000 to 16,000 Buddhists, or 0.2 to 1% of the national population, include Andorra, Malta, Iceland, Estonia, Republic of Ireland, Portugal, Slovakia, Sweden, Italy, Spain, Hungary, Finland, Czech Republic, Netherlands, Poland, Lithuania, Greece, and Bulgaria. In mid-range countries, Buddhist children need to adapt to the influence of friends who might not be Buddhists, and were more likely to be on the receiving end of prejudice. Characteristics of mid-range countries is that there is minimal Buddhist provision for teenagers. In these countries, there are limited opportunities for parents to raise their children as Buddhist. Formation may be limited to within the family. Buddhism is officially recognized by the government, but may have only limited consultative status. Children are sidelined in temples and meditation centers and considered a disturbance to the adult Buddhist activities. There is reduced diversity of heritage and convert Buddhist styles. In these countries, where organized, confirmations and summer camps may be a saving grace for Buddhist youngsters. Sparsely populated Buddhist countries in Europe would include Liechtenstein, Latvia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Belarus, Kosovo, Montenegro, Serbia, the Republic of North Macedonia, Romania, Moldova, Croatia, Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Ukraine, Luxembourg, and Slovenia, all of which have 0.1% or fewer Buddhists in their demographic or net numbers below 5,000. Equality of religion is often fairly recent in these countries. There are a minimum of heritage Buddhists, so the Buddhist community is almost totally convert and adult. Civic society in countries where status of Buddhism is sparse is not entirely to blame for not doing more to encourage Buddhist representation in RE. Buddhists themselves are often reluctant, especially in convert Buddhist communities, where Buddhism is considered an intellectual discipline, not to acknowledge children as worthwhile recipients of Buddhist formation, as if Buddhism arises spontaneously in adult form. Also, bullying and discrimination is potentially more aggressive or systemic in these countries, whereas in the extensive or mid-range countries, there is nothing much worse than being teased about compassion for animals. In countries where Buddhism is new or has no history of migration, raising children to be Buddhist and the whole question of Buddhist formation is absent, with the sole route into Buddhism through conversion as an adult. Varieties of RE style found at present in Europe include pillarized or multicultural, where the subject is either elective, where the pupil may be withdrawn from an entire school year of RE, rather than being opted out on a lesson-by-lesson basis, or the subject may be required. At this point, I would request delegates listening in to fact-check my conclusions. As shown in the slide, this leads to 5 combinations, where the final category is countries where no RE is taught in state-funded schools. In practice, there are currently no European countries retaining obligatory confessional teaching of RE. In cases where the religious subject is required, RE is either multi-religious or non-confessional. Pillarized RE teaching means that a child will be educated to know only about their own faith. Since provision of Buddhist dedicated classes is reliant on minimum numbers, for countries where RE is pillarized, a Buddhist child may never hear their own religion mentioned in school. Multicultural RE means that every child must be literate in a variety of mainstream faiths, and although majority faiths may dominate the discourse, the likelihood is that Buddhism will at least be mentioned in their classes. Buddhist denominational schools have been successfully set up in the United Kingdom, Austria, and Germany. In countries where RE is an elective pillarized subject, the minimum number required to set up a pillarized class varies from the lowest of 3 pupils up to the highest of 15 pupils. Class visits to temples in the name of RE were permitted in some countries such as Belgium, Denmark, and the UK, and visits into schools by non-official Buddhist speakers at the class teacher's discretion were permitted in some countries such as Germany and the UK. Religious education school textbook mentions of Buddhism in non-cultural contexts include those found in Denmark, Cyprus, Switzerland, Norway, Sweden, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Romania, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. Although mention of Buddhism in RE is merely religious literacy, in other words, education about religion, nonetheless, several millennial converts revealed that they had become interested in Buddhism at a young age, in middle school or in high school, because of what they had learned about it in RE, or in spite of this. Extracurricular Buddhist formation is particularly important for mid-range and sparse countries and for countries where no RE is taught in state-funded schools, so Albania, France, Kosovo, Montenegro, and Slovenia. Buddhist formation for youngsters may include parental influence, home nurture, Buddhist confirmation, summer schools, temple Sunday schools, and Buddhist media for youngsters. The particular importance given by Buddhists to home nurture and bringing up children as Buddhists has been well documented amongst heritage families in Europe. Although Buddhists don't force religion on others, least of all their own children, for confirmations there is a sense of awareness of Buddhism at an early age that is later intentionally chosen by the child. The whole family may participate in recitation, bowing, receiving precepts, and tending the family shrine. Bringing up children within the chosen family faith tradition is usually a constitutional right, but in secular European societies, the emphasis, especially in convert families, is put on personal choice from an early age. Buddhist confirmation and summer schools are organized in countries such as France, Germany, Norway, and Sweden. The Buddhist confirmation training is typically a 3 to 5 day course held for a group of Buddhist 15-year-olds. Temple Sunday schools were organized by the Vietnamese, Thai, and Sri Lankan temples in Finland, France, Sweden, Switzerland, Germany, Britain, Czech Republic, and Norway. Typical activities would include prayers, catechism, Asian second language studies, and cultural activities. Although the nature of these activities was instrumental in accordance with the intentions of the adult organizers, French youngsters jokingly refer to the program as brainwashing or Buddhist scouts. The actual benefits the youngsters acknowledged was often much more immersive at the receiving end. Nowhere are the parallels in Buddhist formation more pan-European than in the temple schools. However, not all temples were able to organize formal schools. Some extracurricular formation was also derived from spiritual teachers, if not in person, then from online media. One German girl took refuge in a Tibetan teacher at the age of 9 and has remained a Buddhist ever since. Buddhist media for youngsters in Europe can be seen from dedicated websites for youth or children, such as the German Young Buddhist Deutsche Buddhist Union website and the German Tibetan Buddhist website. In Poland, there are many books on Buddhism for children and teenagers, with many stories for children having been translated from English or have been published by the Marpa Institute websites. In the Netherlands, the Bodhi website, bodhitv.nl, has since 2015 emphasized Buddhist youth readership. The Buddha's Life Rewritten for Children, entitled The Prince Who Woke Up, has been incorporated as young as kindergarten in the national curriculum for the early childhood and care subject to instill children with respect and understanding of other cultures and worldviews in Norway. Briefly, I would like to conclude my literature review in terms of two broad topics: the pan-European phenomenon of Buddhist youth and conversation for RE policy. The experience for Buddhist youngsters differs in extensive mid-range and sparse countries of Europe. Large national Buddhist communities means more power in collective bargaining for the expensive infrastructure of education and government representation that allows Buddhism to be formally taught to youngsters. Nonetheless, in countries with larger Buddhist communities, there have been various efforts to address the vacuum by providing extracurricular activities and information. Schools in some countries have tried to inject some knowledge about Buddhism into their curricula, but have generally fallen short of properly informing the children. Ill-advised systems of RE are a drawback for Buddhists, and I would guess any minority religion. In many of the countries I have categorized as sparse, the sole route into Buddhism is through conversion as an adult. Buddhist formation is left to neo-Buddhist organizations who cannot or choose not to provide for youngsters. In some European countries, even since the issuing of Toledo Guidelines, Buddhist children are sidelined or sent home from RE lessons. Small minorities like Buddhists do not get to hear about their religion in school. So moving on to my second point about compensating for RE policy, for many countries in the EU, Buddhism has been included in RE syllabi as an afterthought or as a future provision for Buddhists who might appear in their classrooms. This is not to speak of European countries where Buddhists are such a small minority that they are neither researched nor acknowledged in educational policy. In terms of Toledo policy, an RE approach that is a safe space for dialogue also fosters courage and self-esteem in Buddhist minorities and facilitates those interested in Buddhism to embrace it more closely on their own time. In terms of temple-based religious education, it would certainly be a mistake for Buddhists not to organize more youth-based activities at temples, because otherwise the upcoming generation will miss out on immersion in values that has the power to help young Buddhists become more self-aware of potentially erroneous religious ideology. Although RE policy in each country does not dictate the state of youth Buddhism, but at least it reflects official attitudes towards minority religion as presented to this age group. Inclusion of Buddhism in RE may give it a veneer of respectability in that country that reflects attitudes more generally in that country. Finally, I should point out that this paper's scope has been too ambitious to be exhaustive, but I have aimed to stimulate debate and mark out an area of academic endeavour to be brought to completion by those with in-depth knowledge of the local areas and languages. I've not been able to go personally into every European country to assess the state of their Buddhist youth, but I have aimed to showcase the voices of young Buddhists in their own languages to show Buddhism as a pan-European phenomenon. Letting young Buddhist voices be heard where available, not as proof, but to lend authenticity. Thank you.